The sun beat down on Harmony Glades, a meticulously planned community where every blade of grass seemed to stand at attention. But beneath the veneer of perfect conformity simmered a potent brew of resentment, most of it directed at one man, Marcus Johnson. Marcus, a software engineer with a booming laugh and an even louder collection of jazz records, was the only black homeowner in the otherwise homogeneous neighborhood. His presence was a constant, grating reminder to some, particularly to Patricia Ainsworth, the self-appointed queen of Harmony Glades and its HOA president, that their carefully constructed world wasn't quite as pristine as they wished. Patricia, a woman whose tightly wound perm mirrored her equally rigid worldview, had made it her personal mission to make Marcus's life as uncomfortable as possible. It started small, notices about his unruly landscaping. Marcus's perfectly manicured lawn was, in reality, slightly greener than everyone else's, complaints about the volume of his music, even at reasonable hours, and subtle, veiled comments about property values. These microaggressions escalated over time, fueled by Patricia's deep-seated prejudice, a prejudice carefully disguised as a concern for the community's well-being. She saw Marcus not as a neighbor, but as an interloper, a threat to the carefully cultivated image of Harmony Glades. Marcus, however, refused to be intimidated. He responded to every notice with meticulous documentation, proving that he was in full compliance with the HOA rules. He turned down his music as a courtesy, but refused to sacrifice his joy for Patricia's comfort. He met her thinly veiled insults with a polite, yet firm, refusal to engage in her negativity. His quiet resilience only served to infuriate Patricia further. She couldn't understand why he wouldn't just give in, why he wouldn't just leave. The other residents of Harmony Glades, for the most part, remained silent. Some quietly disapproved of Patricia's behavior, but none were willing to publicly challenge her. They enjoyed the benefits of living in a well-maintained community, and they feared becoming the next target of her ire. Others shared Patricia's prejudices, albeit in a less overt manner. They whispered amongst themselves, reinforcing her biased narratives and fueling her sense of righteous indignation. Marcus was an outsider, different, and therefore, suspect. The tension in Harmony Glades thickened with each passing day, reaching a fever pitch during the annual HOA barbecue. Patricia, emboldened by a few glasses of Chardonnay and the tacit support of her cronies, made a particularly pointed remark about Marcus's unconventional decorations. Marcus, tired of the constant harassment, finally snapped. He calmly but firmly told Patricia that her behavior was unacceptable and that he deserved to be treated with the same respect as any other resident. The exchange, witnessed by several neighbors, hung in the air like a thundercloud, promising a storm to come. Patricia, humiliated and enraged, retreated to her inner circle, plotting her revenge. The barbecue ended on a sour note, leaving a bitter taste in everyone's mouth. Patricia, however, was far from finished. She was just getting started. The altercation at the barbecue solidified Patricia's determination to drive Marcus out of Harmony Glades. Fines, rule violations, and veiled threats had failed to dislodge him. She needed something more drastic, something that would truly disrupt his life and force him to reconsider his place in their community. Her thoughts turned to the electricity box on the side of Marcus's house. It was a long shot, a desperate measure, but in her twisted mind, it was the perfect solution. She began researching the electrical systems of homes in Harmony Glades, poring over blueprints and online forums. She learned about breakers, transformers, and amps, gleaning just enough knowledge to convince herself that she could execute her plan without getting caught. The risk was significant, but the reward, the removal of Marcus from her perfect community, was worth it in her eyes. She felt justified in her actions, believing she was doing what was best for Harmony Glades, protecting it from what she perceived as an unwanted element. Patricia confided in only one person, her equally prejudiced neighbor, Mildred. Mildred, a gossipy and easily excitable woman, was thrilled to be included in Patricia's scheme. She saw it as a chance to finally rid Harmony Glades of Marcus and solidify her own position within Patricia's inner circle. Mildred volunteered to be Patricia's lookout, watching for any signs of Marcus or his visitors while Patricia attempted to tamper with the electrical panel. The plan was set in motion, fueled by prejudice and a shared desire to maintain the status quo of Harmony Glades. Patricia spent days meticulously preparing for her clandestine operation. She purchased thick rubber gloves, insulated tools, and a high-powered flashlight. She studied the layout of Marcus's property, identifying the best route to approach the electrical panel undetected. She even practiced the maneuver in her own garage, simulating the act of flipping the main breaker. The absurdity of her actions was lost on her. She was so consumed by her hatred and her twisted sense of righteousness that she failed to recognize the potential consequences of her actions. The chosen night was dark and moonless, providing the perfect cover for Patricia's nefarious plan. Mildred, perched on her porch with a pair of binoculars, signaled that the coast was clear. Patricia, heart pounding in her chest, crept across Marcus's lawn, avoiding the flower beds and the motion sensor lights. She reached the electrical panel, her gloved hands trembling slightly as she opened the door. The hum of electricity filled the air, a silent warning that Patricia chose to ignore. She was so close to achieving her goal, so driven by her prejudice, that she dismissed the danger and pressed on, determined to plunge Marcus's house into darkness. As Patricia reached inside the electrical panel, her rubber gloves provided a false sense of security. She had watched enough online videos to think she knew what she was doing. She targeted the main breaker, the one that would shut off all the power to Marcus's house. Her hands, slick with nervous sweat, fumbled with the switch. She ignored the tingling sensation in her fingertips, dismissing it as nerves. She reached further, pressing down on the breaker with all her might. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the panel, followed by a deafening crackle of electricity. Patricia screamed, a high-pitched shriek that was quickly swallowed by the night. A surge of raw power coursed through her body, throwing her backwards with tremendous force. The rubber gloves were no match for the high voltage, and the electricity found its way through the gaps in her protection, burning her skin and shocking her nervous system. Mildred, watching from her porch, gasped in horror. She saw the flash, heard the scream, and knew instantly that something had gone terribly wrong. She scrambled to her feet, her binoculars clattering to the ground. She hesitated for a moment, torn between helping Patricia and fleeing the scene. Fear ultimately won out, and she retreated inside her house, pulling the curtains closed and pretending she hadn't seen anything. Patricia lay on the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. The smell of burnt hair and ozone filled the air. Her body twitched and spasmed, her muscles contracting violently. She was vaguely aware of the pain, a searing, all-consuming agony that threatened to overwhelm her. Her mind raced, filled with images of her meticulously planned community, her pristine lawn, and her unwavering commitment to order. These images were now tainted with the reality of her actions, the consequences of her hatred. The electrical surge had tripped the breaker, shutting off the power to Marcus's house. The sudden darkness jolted him from his evening routine. He had been listening to music, working on his computer, and the abrupt silence was unsettling. He went to investigate, grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. As he stepped outside, he saw Patricia lying on the ground near the electrical panel, her body still twitching. He recognized her instantly, despite her disheveled appearance and the frantic look in her eyes. He knew, without a doubt, that she was the reason for the power outage. His initial shock quickly turned to anger, followed by a wave of disbelief. He couldn't believe that she would stoop so low, that she would risk her own safety, and his, to carry out her vendetta. Despite his anger, Marcus knew he couldn't just leave Patricia lying there. He cautiously approached her, shining his flashlight on her face. Her skin was pale and clammy, and her breathing was shallow and erratic. He could see burns on her hands and arms, and her hair was singed and smoking. He knew she needed immediate medical attention. He quickly called 911, reporting the incident and requesting an ambulance. He explained the situation to the dispatcher, emphasizing the potential for electrical shock. While waiting for the ambulance to arrive, Marcus kept a watchful eye on Patricia, making sure she didn't move and further injure herself. He felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, pity, and a sense of profound disappointment. He had tried to be a good neighbor, to integrate into the community, but Patricia's prejudice had made it impossible. Her actions had not only endangered herself but had also put him at risk. He wondered if this incident would finally expose the deep-seated racism that festered beneath the surface of Harmony Glades. The paramedics arrived within minutes, sirens wailing and lights flashing. They quickly assessed Patricia's condition and began administering first aid. They carefully loaded her onto a stretcher and rushed her to the hospital. Marcus watched as the ambulance sped away, feeling a sense of relief that she was finally getting the help she needed. But he also knew that this was far from over. The police would want to know what happened, and he would have to explain everything, from Patricia's initial harassment to her shocking attempt to sabotage his electricity. The police arrived shortly after the ambulance departed. They questioned Marcus extensively, asking him about his relationship with Patricia, the events leading up to the incident, and his suspicions about her motives. Marcus cooperated fully, providing them with all the information he had. He even showed them the stack of HOA violation notices he had received from Patricia, highlighting the pattern of harassment he had endured. After interviewing Marcus, the police turned their attention to Mildred. They knocked on her door, but she initially refused to answer. They could hear her moving around inside, whispering and shuffling. Eventually, they threatened to break down the door if she didn't cooperate. Mildred, terrified of being implicated in Patricia's scheme, finally opened the door, her face pale and drawn. She denied any knowledge of the incident, claiming she had been asleep all night. However, the police noticed the binoculars on her porch and the obvious signs of distress in her demeanor. They pressed her further, and eventually, she cracked, confessing everything she knew about Patricia's plan. Based on Marcus's statement and Mildred's confession, the police arrested Patricia at the hospital. She was charged with attempted property damage, reckless endangerment, and assault. The news of her arrest spread quickly through Harmony Glades, sending shockwaves through the community. The residents, who had long tolerated Patricia's behavior, were finally forced to confront the reality of her prejudice and the consequences of their silence. The carefully constructed facade of Harmony Glades began to crumble, revealing the ugly truths that lay beneath the surface. The arrest of Patricia Ainsworth sent Harmony Glades into a state of turmoil. The once pristine community was now embroiled in scandal and accusations. The residents, who had previously remained silent out of fear or apathy, were now forced to take sides. The HOA meetings, once characterized by polite discussion and meticulous adherence to the rules, devolved into shouting matches and bitter recriminations. The news media descended upon Harmony Glades, eager to expose the story of racial prejudice and attempted sabotage. Television crews filmed outside Marcus's house, interviewing neighbors and documenting the scene of the crime. The story quickly went viral, sparking outrage and calls for justice. Harmony Glades became a symbol of the subtle, yet pervasive, racism that still exists in many American communities. The other members of the HOA board, desperate to distance themselves from Patricia's actions, quickly moved to impeach her from her position as president. They issued a statement condemning her behavior and pledging to create a more inclusive and welcoming community. However, their words rang hollow, as many residents felt that they had enabled Patricia's prejudice for too long. Marcus, thrust into the spotlight, became an unwilling symbol of resilience and resistance. He received an outpouring of support from across the country, with people sending him letters, emails, and even donations. He used his newfound platform to speak out against racism and to advocate for equality and justice. He stressed the importance of standing up to prejudice, even when it is subtle or disguised as something else. The incident also forced the residents of Harmony Glades to confront their own biases and prejudices. Many began to question their assumptions and to reevaluate their relationships with their neighbors. Some reached out to Marcus, apologizing for their past silence and expressing their desire to build a more inclusive community. Others remained entrenched in their prejudices, clinging to their outdated beliefs and resentful of the attention Marcus was receiving. Mildred, ostracized by her former friends and neighbors, became a pariah in Harmony Glades. She was shunned and ridiculed, blamed for her role in Patricia's scheme. She regretted her decision to support Patricia, realizing that she had been blinded by her own prejudices and her desire for social acceptance. She lost her social standing and her sense of community, paying a heavy price for her complicity. The aftermath of Patricia's arrest exposed the deep divisions and underlying tensions within Harmony Glades. The community, once united by its adherence to the rules and its commitment to conformity, was now fractured and divided. The incident served as a stark reminder that prejudice can fester beneath the surface of even the most idyllic communities, and that it takes courage and commitment to confront it. The trial of Patricia Ainsworth was a media sensation. The prosecution presented a compelling case, highlighting Patricia's long history of harassment against Marcus and the overwhelming evidence of her intent to sabotage his electricity. The defense argued that Patricia was suffering from a mental breakdown and that her actions were not motivated by racial prejudice. However, the jury saw through her lies and found her guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to several years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to Marcus for the damages she had caused. With Patricia behind bars, Harmony Glades began the slow and difficult process of healing. The HOA implemented new policies aimed at promoting diversity and inclusion. They organized community events designed to foster understanding and communication between neighbors. They also established a grievance procedure to address complaints of discrimination and harassment. Marcus, despite the trauma he had endured, decided to remain in Harmony Glades. He believed that it was important to stay and be a part of the community's transformation. He became an active member of the HOA, advocating for policies that would create a more equitable and welcoming environment for all residents. He also used his platform to speak out against racism and to inspire others to stand up for justice. Slowly, but surely, Harmony Glades began to change. The residents, inspired by Marcus's resilience and his commitment to community, started to challenge their own prejudices and to embrace diversity. They learned to appreciate the richness and complexity that comes from living in a community with people from different backgrounds and perspectives. They realized that true harmony is not about conformity, but about understanding and acceptance. The incident served as a wake-up call for the entire community. It forced them to confront their own biases and to recognize the importance of standing up to prejudice, even when it is difficult. It taught them that true community is built on mutual respect, understanding, and a commitment to justice. Years later, Harmony Glades was a very different place. It was a vibrant and diverse community, where people from all walks of life felt welcome and valued. It was a place where differences were celebrated, and where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. The legacy of Patricia Ainsworth served as a constant reminder of the dangers of prejudice and the importance of vigilance. And the story of Marcus Johnson became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of community to overcome even the most deeply ingrained hatred. While scars remained, they served as a testament to the community's journey and its commitment to building a truly harmonious future. The HOA even renamed the community center the Marcus Johnson Community Center, in recognition of his contributions to the community. It had taken a shocking incident to spark change, but finally, there was genuine harmony in Harmony Glades.